Hi folks, if you work in enterprise security, then you know that misconfigurations and just completely fat fingering stuff on your infrastructure, that's usually the thing that gets you. And finding them is not easy. In fact, sometimes it's almost impossible. I have somebody today I'm going to be chatting with who knows a little bit about finding mistakes and misconfigurations and problems and exposures. Really good stuff. I hope you stick around. I think you'll enjoy it. Hi, this is Amoroso from TAG. I want to welcome you to our discussion today. I have an expert in my office today. It's Garrett Hamilton, who runs a company called Reach Security. We're going to learn a little bit about detecting misconfiguration and exposure, a lot of really good stuff that I think if you work in network security, enterprise security, stick around, man. You're going to want to learn something from Garrett. Garrett, welcome to the office in New York. Nice to
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I would have gotten here faster if you would have told me about the view. It's pretty fantastic, so thank you for having us. So as mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Reach Security. We've been at this for around 4 years now, and what we do for our customers is we help them find and fix hidden risk in their organization. And that really ties to what you were sharing about us, and it could be a misconfiguration. It could be actually a risk hotspot in your business that you need to determine how do I identify that exposure and how do I address that exposure. You know, our customers think a lot of us as the whiz of the world for everything else in your environment from an enterprise security stack standpoint. So that's a little bit more about what we do and how we're helping folks really maximize the value of what they have in place today and be able to demonstrate, quantify reducing risk.
Doesn't suck being compared to Wiz, right?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You know, great North Star, I suppose, in terms of what's going on there.
How'd you get into this?
Yeah, so, you know, my story is not the typical founder epiphany story. I wasn't in a hospital that got hit by ransomware at the time, or I wasn't in some military enclave. I've been building products. Yeah, right.
I didn't have that vision.
No, but what I do have
still
is
waiting for that thing.
the unique experience of working at hyper-growth cybersecurity companies. In fact, Palo Alto Networks, which is the number one in the world. I got to be there from the early innings. And when you build and operate a product that is 65,000 customers in size, you start to find trends. And one of the main trends was we spent a tremendous amount of time with customers finding out that they had bought a lot of security infrastructure. They may have even deployed it, but really had no sense of how it was protecting them and what it was doing for them. And the stats you read in these different reports around how misconfigurations or having tools in place that could actually stop the attack were in place but didn't, you know, name any ransomware attack recently. That was something we were seeing play out in real life with our customers. And so we said, okay, the next decade of cybersecurity is probably going to be more focused on how we can help organizations operationalize and measure their programs and measure how they're using their infrastructure versus another mousetrap, another widget. So unfortunately, again, not an epiphany, but really based off of about a decade of experience working with enterprises selling their products. So
I have very similar experience. I notice a lot of vulnerability management teams that are obsessed with like CVEs and these things, almost like the vulnerability comes from the outside in, it wasn't your fault. And when we reverse engineer stuff, my experience has been 9 times out of 10, it's not this thing that came from the outside in, but a misconfiguration, usually human. Is that sort of what you guys were noticing? Because it seems like there's, maybe combine both. I mean, maybe exposure is like a definition of both.
It is, you know, I think that, you know, if I may take you in the Wayback Machine for a second and talk about lacking empathy starting the company, you know, our original problem statement was customers are being compromised by attacks they could have prevented with the products that they own. And there's zero empathy for the customer there. So that didn't necessarily fly over very well when we start to pitch organizations on what Reach does. But really what we found is that we're putting, as vendors, we're putting a lot of responsibility on the customer to know what's right for me. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think the incentive structure for security companies has to be not how much we sell, but how can we make sure that we're actually reducing risk and helping a company over time. And so that started to be more the empathetic conversation we're able to have, which is a mixture of, look, there are things you can certainly do inside of your business, but you have limited resources. So let's bring in the exposure element to figure out if I'm going to invest resources, where will that have the most value? We might have 100 things we could go and do. What are the 1 or 2 that would provide the most value and reduce the most risk across tools and capabilities I already have?
So one day you went home, looked in the mirror and said, dude, let's do it. Let's do a startup.
Well, my co-founder and I have known each other we started 2 weeks apart at our first company. So we've known each other for 16 years working together.
Right.
And we truthfully had kicked around several ideas. You know, we're fortunate enough to grow our careers in the Bay Area. There's no shortage of investors and capital and so forth. And reach this idea that we can identify risk, identify your posture against that risk, and then automate the configuration process of addressing it. That was the idea that everybody said, I don't think you could do it. But if you could, this is the big opportunity in the market. The agreement that the next decade will be about operationalizing things. And so that really was it. It was like, we're stubborn. We also believe this is important. People are telling us that it's really hard and can't do it. So let's prove them wrong. And so far, we've been able to do that.
Is it like scanning on steroids in a sense?
So really what it is it's taking advantage of the past couple evolutions, I'd say maybe over the past decade, of what's been going on in security. So we think of the first evolution would be the willingness of vendors to create an open sense of their platform. Right. APIs, things to connect to, ways to understand configurations, events, things of that sort. Then the market followed path with IT and others, then the realization that we should probably own our data. We should probably build our own data lake, data pond, data swamp, something. We should all build our own next generation of this. And what do vendors prioritize? The most important data they create to go in there first. So we've really been able to take advantage of not needing to scan an entire organization or do that, but leverage things like the scanners or leverage things like the APIs and the data that's now available and readily available to use to make determinations on those things as, okay, what's even available in the network from an asset standpoint, people, products, non-human, et cetera. What is out there from a configuration standpoint, assigning controls, if you will, to all those assets. And then what are the risks that those tools are seeing, / what are we seeing from the outside that could pose a greater risk and exposure to the business. All that's available without an agent. All that's available without deploying a bunch of stuff, which is nice, right? It's nice for the customer, and it's also nice from an innovation standpoint to be able to move quickly on things.
You know, one thing I would offer, I'm probably in the demographic of your buyer, is that things like this don't have to be perfect, they just have to be helpful. Now, maybe you would say, well, my gosh, we do everything, but as a buyer, if you can find stuff I didn't know, even if you don't find anything, I'm buying that every day of the week, because those things can come back to bite you. Do you get that feedback at all? It's like it doesn't have to be perfect.
I am confident that the people you speak to and you yourself have worked through many definitions of what risk means in your organization. Some series of calculations, maybe a little bit of this, and we don't want to be a replacement for that. What we want to be able to do is communicate with absolute clarity. Here is how we see exposure in your organization, and here is the data that backs that. In fact, the type of AI technologies that we use, we do have domain-specific language models, but in addition, we have a precise set of AI models that we've created that can work backwards from the decision and say, hey, here's the data we used to represent the conclusion we're presenting, and you decide, is that a 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10? We'll propose a score, but you decide based on the information you're provided. The context, really, like, we're here to help you make a decision faster. Maybe you include it in a model that makes the absolute decision faster over time as well.
Do you have an ML system that runs?
Several.
How does it work?
Yeah, so my co-founder's background is primarily in building machine learning and AI systems. He was at Cylance, where he built models, Palo, where he built models, Palo Network, Proofpoint as well. So
it's so funny when you said you had a background. I was going to say it's almost impossible to have a background unless you worked in like those companies.
Unless you
there really is no background there, but definitely Cylance. They've done it there. And
yes,
those were pioneers.
Yes. So that background really influences a lot of the core technology and also the people that we hire onto the team to continue to push that forward and build that out, so that we can take advantage in a pragmatic way. We can take advantage of latest innovations, but also maybe compute that made prior innovations really more effective. And I think that ends up being the real advantage here at Reach. Is we've seen what happens when people chase the new shiny toy. and it can take away from serving your customers with the most effective approach.
So if I'm flying at 50,000 feet looking down, so you're describing that my existing tools have open interfaces, APIs, and that's true. This sort of thing probably wouldn't be possible without that.
Right.
So I collect all that. I'm using the data lakes that I built plus what I collect, and then using some sort of heuristic AI to learn what's right and give me insight into right versus like saying, hey, you messed this up. And I mean, that's sort of like the way.
Yeah. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So think about it as a combination of domain-specific technologies that do this. So one of the things you could do as an approach is you could come in and build a baseline like you've described, right? Build a baseline of what's going on in my organization. That is an important and valuable element to have. The other is you can say, well, what's going on in the world and how might I address, am I most, from a technical tools and process standpoint, am I best set up to stop scattered spider or something of that sort, right? Do I have the right things in place, the right controls for my support organization, et cetera, that might be getting hit? And then the third element here is based on my own risk and what I am already seeing, going back historically. I don't need to build a baseline. I can actually look historically back and go, okay, in the world of the past, how would I move forward in the future with my configuration? So it's those three elements. It's a baseline, it's a what's going on in the outside world, and it's a what's going on today with my business. And I'd say that third one is actually what drives the most change with organizations. So they say, well, this is what's happening to me right now, and I can convince the operations stakeholders to make a change because I can point to the past and be like, look, we were okay now, or this actually was an incident. Here's how we can address it, and here's how we can address it now. So Reach is really wanting to help across those three elements with technology.
It's a better way to do vulnerability management. In fact, I think even I would use the word disruptive. I think that's more or less what, if I were trying to determine how to integrate what you described into an operational environment, I'd probably be looking at replacing big pieces of what I'm doing in vulnerability management now. I'm spending a ton of money, and it hasn't really helped much. Do you see, because the market right now is very dog eat dog. Like there's not big growing budgets. You got to go in and find something you can either disrupt or take over. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes. Yeah.
Good for you. You should.
More and more so. I think the biggest travesty that could occur in security on the vulnerability management side, as it shifts to exposure management, which is becoming more and more prevalent, even the programs customers are building, would be for us to continue to treat vulnerability management like an IT function. And what I mean by that is we identify a vulnerability, it's been classified as critical, maybe we have some context on why we think it's critical based on the asset itself, but then we hand it over to IT and say, figure it out. Yeah. And we have these stipulations of 90 days, 30 days, 5 days, 1 day, 2 weeks, whatever it might be. To make it a security function would be to really be able to understand all of the context around that vulnerability, whether it be a person that's vulnerable or a device or something of that sort, and be able to bring that context together in a way that can make sense both to the security team, but also to the IT folks, and say, like, these are all the reasons why it's important and how we can help.
Right. I mean, the advantage of pulling from an interface or an API is that I'm getting live contextual stuff instead of going in and looking at some old log, or even like these AI tools that are reading reports and stuff. It's old stuff. So, I mean, I like it. My observation has been that everybody's got a vulnerability management team. Everybody tracks risks, CVEs, and tries to get a sense of their live sort of posture, like these posture management tools. The latter component, posture management, always struck me as the part that is the most difficult, because it's easy to keep track of dumb things like CVs, just keep track. So I would think that if you realize your vision, then what should happen is we should see maybe a reverse where we start with posture management and the other stuff is more just icing on the cake. Like, all right, great. The CVE becomes context. Instead of starting with CVE. That it's something that's bugged me for years. So I'm glad you're doing this. This is kind of cool.
But I really think of it as starting with asset intelligence. We're working on something right now, this idea of let's build effectively an inventory or an understanding of what we have and
everybody
the posture
sucks at inventory.
Right, and so there's a lot of things that have become more helpful in figuring that out. But at the end of the day, that context on top, that posture context, per what's in your inventory, what controls do I have deployed, how are they configured? Bringing that together, which ironically ends up being kind of another element of configuration management. So we do all of this, we get the posture, we understand the assets and the infrastructure. Now we have the posture component. Now when we get a CV in, we have more information on, do I care about this or not from a risk standpoint? Then I got to do something about it.
Right.
And I'd say, coming back to the operational narrative over the next decade, if you are a tool producing things to do without the ability to action and resolve the issue, or at least assist in resolving the issue, I think you're going to have a hard time. And that's what we're seeing from some of the big legacy players. Is they're really great at scanning and producing stuff, but are they good at paying that debt down over time that effectively they're creating?
All right, so I'm sold. So what's the next step? What would you like people to do? Like, so call you on the website or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think of course you can find us in a multitude of different places online.
You do POCs?
We do POVs.
Is that how you normally do it?
It's so easy, right? So the fact that it's API based, the fact that you're not deploying anything, you can really think of it as deploying one of the classic cloud security posture management tools back in the day. Here's a key, go to town. Now, there are use cases that are valuable our customers are really interested in. So how can you help me do something like turn my implementation of my tools into a measurement of a zero trust program, right? So this is, zero trust is kind of coming back. People are like, okay, we heard about it, marketing's really ruined it, but now it's becoming more of a possibility and we're being asked to measure our programs. So people like CISA have rolled out great ways to do that.
Important.
So you can use Reach to simply assess how are we doing in our zero trust maturity against something like CISA, and what could we go and do? That's a great starting point. So those are great ways to find us. Those one example of a really compelling use case. In fact, Insurity, who's in the insurance tech business, we're going to be doing a couple talks with them at some of the vendor shows on how we help them adopt private access, internet access.
I watched you do a video with my good buddy Phil Venables.
Yeah. And he brought it up. Well, I love to be able to bring valuable context. Like hopefully this is for your viewers. I like to bring valuable context on what's happening in the industry, even if Reach doesn't have a part in it. And Phil obviously has many hot takes.
He does.
And zero trust, ironically, was one of them. I said my tagline was "Back to the Future" on zero trust. Right? Why is Phil bringing it back up? So how you can find us, all the typical ways you can, and as you think about how to check us out, getting started, using the product, all very fast through the same means we've been discussing.
I'm so glad. You having fun?
Yes.
That's the wrong word, right? It's like exciting and horrible and good and great and
I think that we didn't pick a terribly easy problem to solve, and I think that the important ones are difficult to do, but I have fun, or I wake up knowing that our incentives are aligned to the customer's desired outcome. And I think that's special. Right?
People always ask me, what's it like being in a startup? And I say, here's what it's like. Let's say you make 20 great deals per year, but there's 365 days of the year. So you're miserable 345 days of the year and happy 20.
I mean, look, I say, I do not recommend. If people ask me, it's like, do not recommend. But if you do it, you'll enjoy it. Yeah, you
guys are going to do good. You got a
nice
platform,
Appreciate
nice setup, good funding sources.
Yes.
Keep up the good work, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Why don't you come back in a few months and tell me how things are going?
I'd love that. Love to share a little bit more about what we launched at Black Hat and how that's going.
Awesome. Keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you.
And for everyone else watching, we'll see you next time.